The silent arena. Katniss Everdeen had fought many battles in her life, against the Capitol, against other tributes, and even against her own fear. But nothing had prepared her for this. The arena was supposed to be gone, destroyed in the fires of rebellion, but somehow, she had found herself back there, trapped in a twisted version of the games, where the rules were different and the odds were no longer in her favor. It started with a dream. At first, it had felt like nothing more than a nightmare, a replay of the old memories, the horrors of the arena flashing before her eyes. But when she woke, the dream didn't end. She was still there, standing in the center of the silent arena, the towering walls looming over her, casting long shadows on the blood-stained ground. There were no tributes, no cameras, no Capitol officials. The only sound was her own breathing, ragged and shallow. She had her bow, her arrows, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find a way out. The arena was empty, yet she wasn't alone. She could feel it, something watching her, lurking in the shadows, waiting for her to make a mistake. The days passed in silence. There was no food, no water, yet somehow, Katniss remained alive. She hunted, she searched, but the arena was different now. The trees were twisted, the sky a dull, unending gray. The landscape shifted, moving when she wasn't looking, leading her in circles. And always, the feeling of being watched persisted. Katniss, a voice whispered from the shadows, soft and insidious. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The voice was familiar, yet wrong. It was her own voice, distorted, twisted into something dark and malicious. You can't escape. Katniss spun, her bow at the ready, but there was nothing there. Only the trees, the shadows, and the silence. The arena had become a prison, a place where time seemed to have no meaning, where days and nights blurred together. Katniss wandered the twisted landscape, her mind growing foggier with each passing hour. She tried to hold onto her memories, her sense of self, but the arena was slowly stripping it all away. Katniss, the voice whispered again, this time louder, more insistent. She ran, her feet pounding against the uneven ground, but no matter how fast she went, the voice followed. It was always there, always just behind her, always just out of sight. And then, one day, she saw it. A figure, standing at the edge of the woods, cloaked in shadow. It was tall, humanoid, but its features were distorted, its limbs too long, its face obscured by darkness. Katniss, it whispered, its voice soft and mocking. Katniss raised her bow, her hands trembling. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice hoarse from disuse. The figure didn't respond. It only stared at her with eyes that weren't there, its presence oppressive, suffocating. "You can't escape," it whispered again, stepping closer, its movements slow, deliberate. Katniss's heart raced. She fired an arrow, but it passed through the figure, striking the tree behind it. The figure didn't flinch, didn't move. It just kept coming, its voice low and taunting. "You'll never escape." The days turned into weeks, and still, Katniss couldn't find a way out. The figure followed her, always just out of reach, always whispering, always watching. The landscape continued to shift, leading her in circles, trapping her in an endless loop of fear and confusion. Her strength was fading, her hope dwindling. She had survived the arena before, but this was different. There were no tributes, no weapons, no sponsors. There was only her, the figure, and the oppressive silence. One night, as she sat by a dying fire, the figure appeared again, standing just beyond the light. Its voice was louder now, more insistent, more mocking. "Katniss, you can't escape." She didn't respond. She couldn't. She was too tired, too broken. The figure stepped closer, its shadow falling over her. "You'll never escape." In the end, Katniss didn't know how long she had been in the arena. Time had lost all meaning. The landscape was a blur of twisted trees and shifting shadows, and the figure was always there, always watching, always waiting. As she stood at the edge of the clearing, her bow hanging limply at her side, she realized the terrible truth. There was no escape. The arena had won, and she was its prisoner.